want to end up in the Thames. I can't swim, even if I can fly.
Malorda's last words in English were recorded on a portable tape recorder in the hotel bedroom at the Train public house at Tungay, Suffolk, where Malorda was making a survey of East Anglian decoy airfields for the Imperial War Museum.
2 landmines dropped near decoy, making a crater large enough to hide a hayrick. Present owner, Phoenix Insurance Company. Decoy airfield half a mile from Fork in Carrow to Red Rose Lane. From 1940, had lights and fires to attract enemy bombers. Your researchers have surely told you that success has been very limited.
We all know there has been a conspiracy. Only the failures have been recorded. We're all too interested in Icarus, and not enough in his father.
Malorda had been employed as an official witness of the violent unknown event, and because of what he saw, he had himself sterilized as a precaution against making his wife pregnant. He need not have worried, for it soon became apparent that a high proportion of those affected by the VUE, male and female alike, became sterile anyway. Malorda's brother-in-law, Rapper Bagol, had flippantly remarked that a true VUE mutant could only satisfactorily reproduce itself with the aid of a placenta that had developed an eggshell. Malorda and his wife rarely lived together after he had been sterilized.
Is it true you were married in a DC-10 flying over the Eiffel Tower?
That was the intention. But by the time the chaplain recovered from air sickness, we were over Les Invalides.
Is your wife going to watch the flight?
No, she said, too much entertainment and not enough research.
What about the timing? The dog?
For the inaugural flight, I intend to use lights, so the most auspicious time would be in the evening, round about now. I'll make it down into the shadow of the building, when the shadow is at its longest.
That shadow's important to you.
Consider the times it's rotated around this building. I was born down there. My mother started
Still can't get
that
it.
shadow and had to wait.
I was going to ask you that because it is fucking important, because we don't want to hear us talking shit. But
When his duties as an official observer were over, Malorda had turned his attention to publishing an encyclopedic history of flight and to the formation of an aircraft museum at Rochambeau.
okay.
It's been said that having started your life in the shadow of the West
No, I can't help them out. I've no intention of
that's what
fulfilling
happens,
that
right, okay.
particular forecast. Besides, if I fail,
Is that a
you
button?
and your producers,
Every time you stop it and start it, like it gives you a new link.
Oh,
So I've been listening. I keep listening to the old one
right.
when it's been making new ones.
The VUE had affected Malorda's sight for the better and his hearing for the worse, and the muscles along his arms and across his chest and back had become enlarged, engorged, and strengthened. His doctor referred to the phenomenon as potassium phlebitis, or skin wing aggrievement. It was this useful characteristic that eventually persuaded Malorda that his historical and theoretical knowledge of human flight should be put to practical use.
I hear Armour Falls tag as already a read.
What is this, dude?
Save his money. I'm not done.
Peter Greenaway, The Falls.
I'd rather be picked to death by penguins.
Never heard of it.
Athos Aristotle is a Regis-speaking young male.
Discovered this when I was at art
He's
school.
partially blind.
I was in the library and I found it one weekend and was like, are you fucking kidding me?
He's obliged to lubricate himself with Spanish oil.
Is it viable to fly with doing this life?
Is it true that you are plagued with body lights? Up the same. Yes, it is.
You know the best thing about it, Willie, is
Ticks, lights, all termites, tapeworms.
Peter Greenaway used to work. He's a bit like Adam Curtis. He worked for BBC for years, so he had access to all this
After a change in the weather, it's especially bad.
footage that no one had ever heard before.
Within reason, I've been advised to make them moderately comfortable by wearing wool. But I live with it.
Athos, whose comprehension of Metropolitan Dutch has not entirely disappeared, had been born and brought up in Zeeland, an isolated village surrounded by canals that only appeared too empty due to evaporation. In winter, every inch of water in Zeeland turned to ice, and the body predators that worried it slept, froze, or otherwise temporarily capitulated.
It is said that you identify with swallows. Is this correct?
Yes, it's true. But nowadays, that's not unique, is it?
Abbott would have been an expert long-distance ice skater, save for the fact that his mother believed it was dangerous for him, and his fourth recollection, to spend too much time out of doors in the winter.
Followed by the swallows.
Abbot's mother was not a victim of the violent unknown event. As she grew older, and as her son remained the same age, she discovered a new worry for each new season. She could not have too many seasons left to be anxious about, so Abbot patiently waited to be set free, to enjoy immortality on his own. In the meantime, he managed a kite factory, in some part satisfying the desire for unaided flight of himself and in the 19 million other victims of the VUE.
No ice.
Is het waar dat uw vader gedood werd door een vogelteller genaamd Van Hoyten?
Is it true that your father was killed by a bird counter named Van Hoyten? My father was at the Amsterdam Zoo, studying saltwater fish, when Van Hoyten was employed there as a bird counter.
That's pretty nice, eh?
They quarreled.
Yeah, man,
Perhaps
okay.
because my father...
I mean, if you put the projector off, they're a lot more obvious.
It was said they were
You know what I
rivals.
mean? If you put that off, they're just much more bright.
Yeah.
In the summer, Abbott flew a yellow stunt car to intimidate the birds
What
who
does that
were
incriminate
for his predicament.
Nudie
I'm
ladies.
told you drink salt water to crack the ice in your pancreas. I do? Perhaps you're confusing me with someone else.
Perhaps you're confusing
My
me with
father
someone
was
who
always
gives a shit.
experimenting, putting plates in the canals and stimulating the salt glands in pelagic birds.
Wat denk je van de theorie van de verantwoordelijkheid van vogels?
What do you think of the theory of the responsibility of birds? Well, the coincidences seem inexhaustible, obviously. But I leave it entirely to the experts.
When flying his kite, Abbott left swallows alone, knowing that a single bird of that species could be preyed upon by no less than a dozen different types of parasites at any one time, and that was punishment enough.
Standard Falaby has a DC-3 single-berth caravanette with a glass roof. In winter, he hides it among hundreds of other caravans on sites in the west of England, ostensibly that it might escape the scrutiny and examination of his sister Tessida Falaby, whose attentions, according to Standard, are not ornithological and exceed those of an orthodox brother and sister relationship. The VUE Directory Commission have, as yet, not been able to locate Standard Falaby or his caravan. The VUE has contracted Standard's intestine and paralyzed his legs. He is obliged to cling to a hanging brace when asked to stand up. He speaks Kurdian.
Kurdian is a cursive language that deliberately fosters ambiguity and encourages punishment. Toast Looper has said that in the learning for the right man, Kurdian would be a superlative language, an antidote to all the world's spells.
Since the VUE, Standard Falaby has developed a passionate interest in the corvidae, and every rook nesting season he parks his
Say again?
caravan beneath a
What's it
rookery
called? The
somewhere in the west of England within sight of the
Gonzo
Atlantic.
Shonks, live and direct.
He has
Shut
laid
up.
claim before the World Society for the Preservation of Birds.
Have you told people to tune in, like?
No.
Species.
No.
Not yet.
Corvus
I've got no
frugulatus
idea what that is.
atlanticus,
I
whose
well,
diet is
even,
largely shellfish and whose call is
Turn that off.
primitive of immaturity. The WSPD has not
Ah, why is
recognized
it still
its
picking
claim.
up the fucking microphone?
I don't know what mic it's picking up. I don't know if it's that mic or if it's this mic.
Yeah, because surely it should just be picking up what's going through the line, right?
Hey, it's a chill double shot espresso from Starbucks. That's a double shot of espresso for when you need less than 3 but more than 1. He gets it. A pick-me-up to perk you up and keep you up. That's surprisingly chilled. Chill double shot espresso from Starbucks.
Pauline Falaise had shining eyes, a yellow skin, and a blaze on her forehead in the shape of the Austro-Hungarian double-headed eagle.
Colin Falaise e rundvlegisne, e longrifane, e le branche de le guerrere et curve Austrian-Hungarian Ukrainska.
Scoreline Falaise had shining eyes, a yellow skin, and a blaze on her forehead in the shape of the Austro-Hungarian double-headed eagle. She spoke in whatever language took her fancy, and her whims were apparently influenced by the state of her appetite, which was usually small. She was known as a reticent conversationalist. Scoreline was paid a small retainer by the Language Commission, and when it was learned that she was building up an appetite, the Language University at
Carlos Valently perdit sa femme
Carlos Valently lost his wife
à l'époque de l'événement violent et inconnu.
at the time of the violent unknown event.
C'était une femme loquace d'une tenue négligée,
She was a voluble, untidy woman
qui cousait elle-même ses vêtements
who made her own clothes
et se lavait une fois par semaine
and washed once a week
dans l'eau,
in the water
blessée par le linge qu'elle avait passé à l'essoreuse.
wrung out of the laundry.
Elle était d'un prix inestimable pour son mari.
She was invaluable to her husband.
Elle s'occupait de sa volaille,
She looked after his poultry,
tenait la comptabilité,
kept his accounts,
et une fois excitée,
and when roused,
elle était une épouse aussi uxorieuse
was as uxorious a wife
que Carlos l'aurait pu désirer.
as Carlos could wish to have. On the night of June 12th of the VUE, Carlos's wife suffered a stroke, and Carlos transferred his affection to a turkey.
VUE directory records for Carlos a debilitating malfunction of the left ventricle, bone marrow disease, and save for the VUE immortality clause, would have normally given him 6 months to live. Carlos had buried his wife in the floor of his greenhouse. The local authorities later had the body exhumed. Now Carlos lived in the greenhouse to keep his turkey company. A fowl pest epidemic finally erased Carlos's other poultry, and 2 veterinary officials came to make sure he had burnt or buried all the corpses. Insisting that the one remaining bird should be destroyed as well, the vet promised to compensate Carlos with at least a set of photographs. These are the photographs taken as the vet stalked the bird with his camera, whilst the vet's assistant stalked the bird with a shotgun. Carlos was not happy with the photographs. He is now awaiting trial at Clichy for shooting the vet.
Musicus Philantly had quickly acclimatized himself to the effects of the violent unknown event. A sufferer of patagium pholitis and a speaker of Allo, he moved to Portmaddock, learned to sing in Welsh, practiced illusionism, and began a private study of linguistics he called aeroethnography. Musicus worked on an Allo-Welsh dictionary and was instrumental in adapting Da Vinci's notes on human flight as a text for the VUE anthem. Musicus also wrote a Welsh Allo choral work celebrating 92 early flight pioneers. This work of considerable complexity and an excess of narrative proceeded by listing categories of flight. The main characters were divided into pilots, night pilots, airmen, flyers, aeronauts and female aeronauts, birdmen and gullers. A guller was an Allo word for those whose attempts to fly had taken place over water. Icarus had been a guller. Musicus called his work Sky Lists and dedicated it to Van Ricart, the French patriot and pioneer airman who threw himself from the Eiffel Tower in 1889. Cadence, Musicus's wife, said that the film was a reconstruction, not least because the moving picture camera wasn't invented until 1895. Van Ricart had been a linguist and a baritone in the Lycée Nouvelle Ménilmontant. Musicus Philantly's eldest son, Van Rieck, was named after Van Ricart, but although he showed an interest in his father's illusionism, he had no interest in choral work, language, or self-propelled flight. He became a sound recordist.
Dear Sir, in reply to your query about Rallis Fallenway, my husband was on artificial Lake 11 early on the morning of June 13th.
In this dry overflow gully, Rallis Fallenway began his post-VUE life after 3 hours of artificial.
He said the lake shook 3 times, the ripples coming from the edge of the lake and rippling inwards towards the center, the reverse of what would happen if you threw a stone into the water. I'm not interested in hiding the fact that my husband Rallis was a nationalized Canadian. He took his Canadian name from the road where we lived at Cashabowie, and the road had been named after Lewis Fallen, the lumberjack. Lewis Fallen was a second-generation Patagonian Welshman like Rallis, and he'd worked for the Goldhawk Company as a topman, and he'd been crushed by a giant redwood, the ones you don't come across anymore on account of them all being pulled down. The second time Rallis felt the lake shake, he fell into the boat and banged his head on the rowlock. When he sat up again, he felt sure he'd got something in his eye. He felt sick at the back of his throat and at the back of his nose, and his eyes ran. He was giddy for a long time. I learned from my neighbors that it was common knowledge that Lewis Fallen, the lumberjack, had been awarded damages for his accident. The Goldhawk Timber and Fisheries Company presented his widow with a certificate and a tray of eagle eggs, and they named the road in Cashabowie after him. The road is supposed to be exactly 57 meters long as the redwood that crushed Fallen's chest. Third time, my husband fell into the lake. His anorak must have trapped some air and kept him afloat because he remembers nothing else. He was picked up by a Goldhawk vessel from the Weir where his body had floated about 10 o'clock in the morning. He'd been in the water 5 hours. They gave my husband the day off and said he was lucky that they'd found him. Rallis became blind 2 days later.
Rallis Fallenway is registered as a middle-aged male man suffering from Meniere's disease. migraine, and catharoid apoplexy. His lips grew calloused, his tongue diminished, and a malfunctioning nictating membrane on his left eye operated involuntarily in conditions of bright light, making his vision sparkle with refractive light.
They sent me a certificate which said that the Gold Hawk Fisheries Company named the lake, number 11 lake, after my husband, the Wallace Fallenway Lake. And they gave me a case of stuffed fish. They look like flying fish. Here's hoping my knowledge of my husband's case can help you.
Drift in your eyes since all of you.
Anna Forlanx is presently the fourth custodian of the Boulder Orchard, the generally recognized geographical epicenter of the violent unknown event. The Boulder Orchard's first permanent custodian was H.C. Carter, painter, filmmaker, banjo player, hydrologist, and investor. The second custodian was Raphael Gold, photographer, embryologist, saxophonist, firewatcher, and writer of Egg Tales.
I noticed a brown sort of ball by the side of the road.
The third custodian was Capuzzo Feltis, singer and ornithological registrar. Alia Forlanx, as pianist, ornithologist, cataloger, apiarist, and expert on flying nest sounds, perpetuated and expanded the custodian tradition. However, the publication of personal biographical details of VUE Commission employees is forbidden. This embargo does not as yet extend to their families, so it is possible to consider the VUE history of Alia's wife, Starling Forlanx. Starling Forlanx, singer, firework enthusiast, wanderer, collector of berets, bird hats and cardboard boxes, authority on the nightingale, was struck down by the VUE near a late-flowering hawthorn bush on the road into the Manifold Valley. Starling met Alia just 8 hours after the VUE. They were both suffering from sore feet. After considerable wanderings, with or without the VUE's disorienteering experience, Starling moved into the Tithon corn farm with her children, her hats and her cardboard boxes, when Alia became the fourth custodian of the Boulder Orchard. Perhaps finding it difficult to cripple a moving target, the VUE's interest in Starling Forlanx has been sporadic. But now that she has settled, she can no longer taste salt, open her eyes underwater, wear velvet next to her skin, or smell hawthorn blossoms.
I have less than 30 seconds, I have less than half a minute to complete this little minute waltz. The sands of time I know are pouring, let me win my bet and I'll run with the money down to Sonic Store and there I'll buy a honey. Honey, I can last the scale, I won't have failed to sing the little minute waltz.